The International Monetary Fund, IMF, and other multilateral groups should do more to address the impact global inflation is having on food supply shortages for poor countries. That's the cry of ONE, ONE, a civil society group fighting for more money to be released to fix the global food and economic crises for especially poor countries. ONE launched Free the Funds, a campaign to get wealthy countries to unlock the funds to help the world's poorest countries weather the economic storm. Representatives of ONE protested in front of the IMF headquarters and World Bank in Washington, D.C. during the recent IMF World Bank annual meetings. SK Newsline was in Washington, D.C. to cover the meetings and spoke to Sarah Harcourt, Policy Director, Development Finance at ONE.
We feel that the world is burning and the money and resources to fight the global food and economic crises are there, but global leaders are keeping them locked away. So we need to free the funds to fight the global crises and ensure that we have enough money to go around for everyone, because the consequences of inaction are real. If we don't see countries helping, then there are 22 African countries that are on the verge of a global debt crisis at the moment. And we know that if the 16 countries most at risk of debt distress go in, then we could see 20 million more people fall into poverty.
While the IMF announced its approval of a temporary food shock window under its emergency financing instruments. According to the IMF on its website, the food shock window will provide for a period of a year, a new channel for emergency fund financing to member countries that have urgent balance of payment needs due to acute food insecurity, a sharp increase in their food import bill, or a shock in their cereal exports. Managing Director of the IMF, Kristalina Georgieva, spoke about the IMF's food shock window at a recent press conference during the annual meetings.
There were a number of people referring to the high fertilizer prices as potentially a risk for next year, not only the risk that we face today, but the risk that may be amplified next year. For the ability for us to expand our liquidity provision capacity and reserve provision capacity through the on-lending of SDRs, there was a much stronger sense in the room that this is a line of defense that we can make available to our members, and it is also a line of offense when it comes down to addressing climate and addressing risks of future pandemics. The countries that were the first to provide support, Australia, Canada, China, Germany, Japan, and Spain. Spain actually should come first because they were the first to provide financing. And a number of those who were in the room that have not yet pledged, indicating intention to pledge. Of course, this would give us more lending capacity, and lending capacity on terms that are very attractive for our members.
But Ms. Harcourt said this is not enough.
No, it's absolutely not enough. There's so much more that leaders could be doing. The food shock window is just a drop in the bucket compared to the need. There are 100 billion in SDRs, special drawing rights, that countries could access, and G20 leaders have promised to rechannel these to the poorest countries, but so far they're lacking 40 billion in their commitment. We've also seen commitments from the G20 to help countries restructure their debt, but so far not a single country has seen debt relief from that over a year and a half later. And we also need real commitments from the World Bank and the institutions to reform their lending frameworks so that instead of lending tens of billions now, they could lend hundreds of billions up to $1 trillion if they better leverage their resources.
Food prices and shortages persist for much of 2022 due to a combination of economic and geopolitical events, most notably the Russia-Ukraine war. This follows the food security and economic crises triggered by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Andre Huey for SKN Newsline.